service. And he met with Srila Sanatana Goswami at Benares and instructed him there for, I think, 3 months on the topics of devotional service. Sanatan had just escaped the seva of Nawab Hussain Shah. Both Rupa and Sanatan, they were highly placed in Hussain Shah's kingdom. One was the prime minister, and the other was the treasurer of the state. So they're not small people. In Srinivasacharya's prayers to the Goswamis, he describes them as Mandalapati. He says they were like the kings of the world, and they associated with the kings of the world. But for the seva of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they gave that up. And he says they never experienced discomfort. I mean, if you think of living in very high aristocracy, and then hearing the message of love of God and giving of that high position of aristocracy, just to become beggars, to be lovers of the Lord. That's what they did. So Rupa escaped first, and then Sanatan escaped. And when he reached Benares, he basically still was wearing like his Muslim style dress of the royal court, like some type salwar kameez or kurta pajama or something like that, with big daddy, big beard. And he went to the home of either Chandrasekhar or Tapan Mishra. And Lord Chaitanya was staying there. And Lord Chaitanya looked at these devotees and said, "The great Vaishnava has come. Would you please go outside, find his Vaishnava?" And they went outside and they just saw this Muslim. And they said, "No Vaishnava has come, there's just one Muslim sitting outside." Lord Chaitanya said, "No, no." And he went outside and he saw Sanatan. And he immediately lifted up Sanatan and embraced him very, very tightly. Lord Chaitanya was very fond of embracing his devotees. Over and over again, we've seen in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Lord Chaitanya was really a hugger. He liked to take his devotees and hold them close to his heart. And Lord Chaitanya commended him on coming, and they exchanged news. Lord Chaitanya informed, I think it was at that point, informed how his youngest brother, Anupam Sri Vallabh, had passed away. And then Lord Chaitanya invited Sanatan to have lunch with him. And he turned to either Chandrasekhar or Tapan Mishra and he said, "Before lunch, please go allow him to shave and clean himself, and please get him some nice clothes to wear, and bring him for lunch. So Sanatan went and had bath and cleansed himself very nicely. And then one of those Vaishnavas brought him like a nice dhoti and something new and fresh. And Sanatan said, no, this I cannot accept. He said, I've come here to live the life of a mendicant. He said, you bring me your old cloth. So the devotee brought one old dhoti, and Sanatan ripped it in such a way that he could have like a little Babaji cloth and some little piece to put on his shoulder and some kopan. When he had been traveling, he met up with a sister and her husband. The husband's business had been to buy horses for Hussein Shah. And when they saw Sanatan in such a tattered condition, that opulent brother-in-law said, please, you take my chadar. Somebody, you can only imagine being in the seva of Hussein Shah. It must have been like a very beautiful pashmina chadar, probably with very beautiful embroidery. Came back to Lord Chaitanya dressed with his Babaji vesh, and he had this beautiful chadar on his shoulder. And Lord Chaitanya looked at him and he said, you're looking very beautiful. While he was saying that, Lord Chaitanya was staring at the chadar. So Sanatan said, yes, he doesn't like. I've come here to lead a particular type of life. He doesn't approve of my chadar. So Sanatan went down to the river, and one old sadhu, or some poor man, he was washing his dhoti, and he had like little chadar piece with holes in it, some cotton. He said, you take my chadar, give me your chadar. And the man looked at him and he said, Babu, why you seem like such an intelligent man. Why are you speaking such teasing words to me like that? So Nathan said, no, I'm serious. Please, you take my chadar, you give me your chadar. And then he went back, and Lord Chaitanya saw that, and he said, first class. And then Lord Chaitanya said, please, we'll take our meal. No, either Tapan Mishra or Chandrasekhar said, he's going to have his meal now, come. Sanatan said, no. He said, I've entered this life not to fill my belly. He said, if I'm always filling my belly with tasty things, I will never be able to remember Krishna. He said, if the Lord leaves something behind, you give that to me. And the rest of his life, that's how he lived. He would never cook. He would only do like begging to get his food. Whatever little thing that people gave, that's what he would accept. So Lord Chaitanya began his instructions to Sanatan. And Lord Chaitanya, he took a real interesting methodology. And in chapter 21, when he's talking to Sanatan, he's speaking all about the opulence and the power of the Lord. And then, after the Lord is describing the opulence and the power of Krishna, the Lord Chaitanya, he starts to become mad in love for Krishna. And then he starts to describe the beauty of Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya, seriously, he, as we say, he went off the deep end. And he was like trembling, and he was holding Sanatan's hand. And he started speaking of the beauty of Krishna from the perspective of Sri Radha. And he said, Krishna has the beauty of 24 and a half full moons. He said, Krishna's face is the emperor moon, his body is the throne that the emperor sits on, and he governs a society of moons. And he said that Krishna's face is a moon, and his two cheeks are full moons, and the dot of Chandan that he has on his forehead is a full moon, and his 10 fingers are full moons, and his 10 toenails are full moons. And he said, Krishna's just sweet. Krishna's Madhur. He said, everything is sweet about Krishna. He said, his body is sweet, his face is sweeter. The sweetest thing is the smile. And then he started going deeper into his profound feelings of love for Krishna. And he started saying things like, the peacock feather. He said, the peacock feather in Krishna's hair is like a rainbow in the sky. And he said, Krishna's yellow garments are like a flash of lightning. And he said, Krishna is like a dark rain cloud. And he said, the gopis are like freshly sprouted grains on the field. And from that dark rain cloud of Krishna come rains of pastimes that nourish the gopis and cause them to grow in ecstatic love. Lord Chaitanya was very much in ecstasy. And in the end, Lord Chaitanya was grasping Sanatan. And he said, Sanatan, he said, I meant to speak on one thing, but because of this madness, I spoke on something completely different. He said, I spoke something I didn't mean to speak. And he said, why? He said, it's because Krishna is unlimitedly merciful to you. And because Krishna wanted to show you his mercy, through hearing this, he made me speak it. That's the only reason I spoke it. It's because Krishna wanted to show mercy to you. And then Lord Chaitanya says, if anybody hears about this description of Krishna, they will attain pure love. And that's the end of the chapter. Kaviraj Goswami is in every chapter of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita. At the end, he begs and he cries for the mercy of Rupa and Raghunath Das Goswami. Because in this world, they were the two most confidential Sevites of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And in that world, the two most confidential Sevites of Sri Radha. But then, in the next chapter, when Lord Chaitanya begins to speak, he said, you know, I've spoken about a lot of things. I've spoken about a lot of different relationships with Krishna. He said, now I'm going to speak about the process of how to attain that. So it's sort of like, a little bit like reverse engineering. He was like speaking about prayojan, or the goal. And then, and I think later he's going to go back to, you know, the goal of life. But, you know, in that chapter he's speaking about the goal, which is, and even in that chapter, he gives a description of the Kama Gayatri mantra, which is describing Gopinath or Kamadev, which is the goal of bhakti, service. But then he goes back to Abhideya, to explaining the process, and then he starts very methodically, as all teachers do. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Krishna expands into Sankarshan, Aniruddha, Pradyumna, and who else? Sankarshan, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, Vasudeva. And then from them, so many expansions fill up the Vaikuntha world. And he says Krishna has his personal expansions, and then he has his separated expansions. And he says the separated expansions are the living beings. And they fill up the material world. And he says then there's different processes of trying to become free from the material entanglement and the suffering of this material world. And so he touches on karma, jnana, and yoga. And he says, but none of them, you should know, Sanatan, none of these processes are successful unless a person will engage in bhakti. They're all weak, because none of these processes purify the heart like bhakti. Krishna tells us that in the Gita. He says, Bhakti amam abhijanati yavanyascha smitattataha. To mam tato gyatva vishpeta ganantaram. He says, it's only by bhakti that I can be understood. Bhakti amam abhijanati. He never says karma mam abhijanati. He never says jnana mam abhijanati. He never says yoga mam abhijanati. He says bhaktya mam abhijanati. Because bhakti washes the heart. So Lord Chaitanya, he starts telling Sanatan how there's lots of people who he says, you know, there's a lot of people who perfectly perform duties of varnashram dharma, karma, or material gain. But at least twice in that chapter he says, you can do everything in varnashram dharma very perfectly, but if you're not a devotee, the only fruit of that is that you go to hell. And then he says, the yogis, they only want material gain, and like powers, cities. And then he says, the jnanis, he quotes that verse from the Bhagavatam, Yene Ravandaksham Vimuktamaninas. He says, by their philosophical word juggling, They may even rise to the spiritual platform. But because they have avishuddha buddhaya, which means impure intelligence, they'll again fall down. And so avishuddha buddhaya means their intelligence has not been washed by bhakti. And they don't understand that eternally I'm the servant of Krishna, and the only thing in my life is giving pleasure to Krishna. Anything outside of giving pleasure to Krishna is total uselessness. You know, you can be the biggest, greatest Vedantic scholar, but if it's not aimed at giving pleasure to Krishna, or like, are there any disciples of Tamal Krishna Goswami here? I heard him say one time in a class, he said, they know everything about the Vedas, but one thing, the goal is to please Krishna. You know, what is that point that Krishna makes in the Bhagavad Gita? That verse, he says, remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. What is it? Vedesha. Somebody say it loudly because I'm having a senior center.
Vedeshu sarveshu ahameva vedyo.
Yeah. Krishna says the goal of all of that Vedic research is only to know me and to love me and to serve me. They spend their whole life in all of this education, but they miss the essential point, which is to love Krishna. It's a waste of time. Shrama eva kevalam. So then he starts taking Sanatana a little closer into understanding how bhakti will work. So I just read a few verses from Chaitanya Charitamrita before we begin. Is that all right? So this is that verse, Yene Ravindakshama Mukti Maninas. O lotus-eyed one, those who think they are liberated in this life, but do not render devotional service to you, must be of impure intelligence. Although they accept severe austerities and penances and rise to the spiritual position, to impersonal Brahman realization, they fall down again because they neglect to worship your lotus feet. And then here's something that everybody knows. Krishna Suyasama Maya Haya Ankara. Krishna is compared to the sunshine and Maya is compared to darkness. Wherever there is sunshine, there cannot be darkness. As soon as one takes to Krishna consciousness, the darkness of illusion, the influence of the external energy will immediately vanish. Yeah, if we take to Krishna's bhakti, we're in the sunlight. And there's no darkness in the sunlight. I mean, maybe the shadow can be behind us, but it's not in front of us. The external illusory energy of Krishna, known as Maya, is always ashamed to stand in front of Krishna, just as darkness is ashamed to remain before the sunshine. However, that Maya bewilders unfortunate persons who have no intelligence. Thus, they simply boast in this material. They simply boast that this material world is theirs and that they are the enjoyers. I am an American. I am an Indian. I am a Punjabi. I am Fijian. I am South African. So they just become bewildered. He says, but One is immediately freed from the clutches of Maya if he seriously and sincerely says, "My dear Lord Krishna, although I have forgotten you for so many long years in the material world, today I am surrendering unto you. I am your sincere and your serious servant. Please engage me in service." And this is actually the vow given by Sri Ramji to his devotees. From the Ramayana, Lord Ramachandra says, "It is my vow that if one only once seriously surrenders unto me, saying, 'My dear Lord, from this day I am yours,' and prays to me for courage, I shall immediately award courage to that person, and he will always remain safe from that time on." That's the vow of the Lord. If we go before Ramji here, if we go before Gopinathji, we say, "Dear Lord, from this day on, I'm yours. Just please give me the courage to remain fixed in bhakti." We'll say, "Chalo, take it. Done. Kalas. It's all yours. Just take it." That's how merciful the Lord is. He'll bless us in that way. And then Mahaprabhu says, due to bad association only, the living entity desires material happiness, liberation, or merging into the impersonal aspect of the Lord, or he engages in mystic yoga for material power. If such a person actually becomes intelligent, he takes to Krishna consciousness by engaging himself in intense devotional service to Lord Shri Krishna. And then Mahaprabhu cites Bhagavatam, "Akama savakamo va mokshakamo dudaditi, vibrena bhakti yogena jajeta purusham param." Whether one desires everything or nothing, whether he desires to merge into the existence of the Lord, he is intelligent only if he worships Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by rendering transcendental loving service. Anything you want, karma, jnana, yoga, if you're just intelligent enough to worship Krishna, Krishna will throw it at you. Without two thoughts, karma. Without two thoughts, yoga. Without two thoughts, jnana. When you start asking for bhakti, though, Krishna starts thinking, slow down. And why is that? Because when Krishna gives you pure bhakti, Krishna gives you himself and he becomes your servant. He becomes your lover. That's why, like last night, our Ananda Murti, he was talking about that George Harrison song, "My Sweet Lord." And in that song, he says, "Lord, I really want to see you. I really want to know you. But it takes so long. It takes so long." Because Krishna, he wants to give, but he wants to know if you're sincere and if you're ready. Because why? The fruit of prema bhakti is himself. It says, "Mammana bhavamad bhakta majjaji mam namaskaru mam ivasyasi satyante pratijani priyosime." I promise I will bring you to me. Why? because you become my lover. Krishna says, do you really want to be my lover? Are you ready to do what so many of the others have done just to have me? Are you ready to make those sacrifices just to have me? Because if you are, I'm yours. But you have to show me. If those who desire material enjoyment or merging into the existence of the absolute truth engage in the Lord's transcendental loving service, they will immediately attain shelter at Krishna's lotus feet. Although they did not ask for it, Krishna is very merciful. But this is something I always remember Krishna saying from reading Chaitanya Charitamrita. Krishna says, if one engages in my transcendental loving service, but at the same time he wants the opulence of material enjoyment, he is very, very foolish. Indeed, he is just like a person who gives up ambrosia to drink poison. Srila Prabhupada would always say, don't trade in your bhakti credits for something material. He'd say, it's just stupid to do that. And here Krishna says, he says, if they engage in my service, but they want material things, it's just like, drinking ambrosia, but giving it up for poison. But then Krishna says, Ame Bigya. Krishna says, I'm smarter than they are. Since I am very intelligent, why should I give this fool material prosperity? Instead, I shall induce him to take shelter on my lotus feet and make him forget material enjoyment forever. He's clever. Krishna is very chalu. And he'll hook us, he'll bait us, he'll do so many things. He may throw some crumbs to us, but he's going to hook us with bhakti. Whenever Krishna is requested to fulfill one's desires, he undoubtedly does so. But he does not award anything which, after being enjoyed, will cause one to petition him again and again to fulfill further desires. When one has other desires but engages in the Lord's service, Krishna forcibly gives one shelter at his lotus feet, and he will forget those material desires. When someone engages in Lord Krishna's devotional service for the satisfaction of the senses, but instead acquires a taste for serving Krishna, he gives up his material desires and willingly offers himself as an eternal servant of Krishna. We'll stop here, but the example that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives is of Dhruva Maharaj. Beta, we are waiting for you to sit down. Thank you, Beta. He gives the example of Dhruva Maharaj. And Dhruva, he says, Stana Vilasi Tatasi Sitoham. He said, after he saw the Lord, he said, Lord, Stana Vilasi. He said, I had an Abhilas, a big stan. He said, I didn't want Hindustan, I didn't want Pakistan, I didn't want Kazakhstan, I didn't want, Krishna says, in the Gita, Krishna says, Prakritistan. He said, I didn't want Prakritistan. He said, I wanted a kingdom bigger than Brahma. He said, that's what I wanted. And to do that, so much tapasya I undertook. So much tapasya, so much penance, so much hardship I undertook. He said, but now I've seen you. And I can understand